Hello, grade nines. I hope you guys are well and yeah, just keeping safe in this time of lockdown. Today we're going to be starting a new topic, the respiratory system. So we finished up with the musculoskeletal system last week, and so yeah, we're supposed to be moving on to the circulatory system, but that system is fairly complex, and so I would like to do that system when we are back in class together. So I've decided to move on to the respiratory system. So if you have a look in your textbooks, it's on page 66 to 77, but the PowerPoint is really the main resource that you will require, which I've also sent to you guys, and you can make notes or copy down the notes in your workbooks, please, with a new heading. So put the date with the new heading, the respiratory system, and then everywhere where it says write down or copy this, please would you write that in your books. Okay, and so yeah, I'll also send some stuff that you can print. If you don't have access to a printer, please just let me know or let Mrs. James know, and we will have a printed set of worksheets for you guys that your parents can come and pick up from the school. Okay, so let's get into the respiratory system today. So guys, this is a fairly complex picture of the respiratory system, and I don't expect you to know the complexities of this. This is just so that you can identify where the heart is situated in relation to the lungs. So you can see the lungs are found on in the center of the thoracic cavity or the chest cavity, and between the two lungs is the heart. So there we have the heart. The heart is situated slightly towards the left of the lungs, and therefore, because it's towards the left, the left lung is actually smaller. So now you may be looking at this video and thinking that that's the right lung. Well, when you're looking at an image, because of the image being flipped, the left side of the page is actually the right side of the body, while the right side of the page is the left side of the body. And so you need to be familiar with that. If you're looking at an illustration, you're looking at the image, you are looking at the right side of the page, but that's actually the left lung. Okay, or you're looking at the left side of the page, but that's actually the right lung. And so you can see there it's labeled right lung and left lung. So the left lung is a little bit smaller than the right lung. Now the lungs are protected by the pleura, okay, and we'll talk about all of these things at a later point. That's just a membrane that protects it all. And then most of us should know that we have the ribs and the sternum. This we did when we did the musculoskeletal system. So the ribs protecting the thoracic cavity, so protecting those lungs, protecting that heart, protecting those vital organs from any kind of injury or damage. And so that is the ribs. The sternum in the front, which we commonly call the breastbone, but we know it's called the sternum, also protects that the heart, and then behind the thoracic cavity is protected by the vertebra. So the vertebra make sure that from the back that we have this protection, as well as the ribs that go around. Okay. So what is the function of the respiratory system? So you guys need to write this down in your workbooks, please. The function is to obviously supply oxygen to the body. So this is the movement of oxygen into the system and the release of carbon dioxide out of the system. So carbon dioxide can become quite toxic to the body if you don't get rid of it. And so we need to get rid of that carbon dioxide. Where does that carbon dioxide come from? In grade 8, we did the process of cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is where we break down energy, we break down glucose, the food that we eat, in the presence of oxygen to give us energy. Okay, and so that's the process that we use to release energy, this process of cellular respiration, done by the mitochondria in all the cells. And that process releases carbon dioxide as a waste product. Now, if you don't get rid of that waste product, it's going to build up and it's going to become toxic. If you don't have enough oxygen, you're not going to make enough energy. And so the whole function of the respiratory system is to bring this oxygen into the system and eliminate carbon dioxide from the system. Okay, and there's a number of structures that are involved in this. So let's go through the main structures very quickly. We obviously have the nose and the mouth. Now, the nose and the mouth have different functions in terms of breathing, okay, and we'll talk about that when we get through each of these individually. We have the trachea. Now, the trachea is referred to as the windpipe, or what most people would say, your windpipe. And so there's the trachea, and there are other passageways as well. There's something called the bronchi, and then there are the bronchioles, and we'll talk each of these individually. We have the lung tissue themselves, okay, and so the lungs, the right lung and the left lung, we've already discussed briefly. We have the blood. The blood is necessary to transport this oxygen to the rest of the body, as well as remove carbon dioxide and transport it back to the respiratory system to eliminate the carbon dioxide. And then lastly, we have the structures that are responsible for inhalation and exhalation. So we've got the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a sheet of muscle that's situated at the bottom end of the thoracic cavity. This is what basically gets a spasm when you have hiccups. Okay, so that muscle, when we have hiccups, that muscle is is a muscle that is going through a bit of a spasmodic reaction, or just having a bit of a spasm when you have hiccups. And that's what is, we can feel it, okay? So that's the best way I can describe it. That's where it is and what it does. Now, the diaphragm is really important in terms of breathing in and out. So if you take a big breath in, you will feel that the thoracic cavity, the chest cavity, starts to expand. And we'll get more into that towards the end of the topic. Obviously, we need muscles in order for this to happen. There are muscles between the ribs. So between each rib, there's muscles, and those muscles are responsible for breathing. And then we have the rib cage. As I've already said, the rib cage is there for protection of the system, and also to bring about movement of the system, so that when the muscles contract, they have something to contract against. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so there are three important processes, grade 9s, okay, that are necessary for this entire system to work together. And they are actually different. Okay, we're going to talk about each one of these individually. There is the process of breathing. Breathing is actually moving air into the system and out of the system. So that's the physical process. That's the mechanical process of bringing that carbon dioxide, oxygen-rich air in and carbon dioxide-rich air out. That's what's breathing, and that's the mechanism that we would call breathing. Okay, so if everybody takes a breath and out, that's breathing. Okay, then we have the process of gaseous exchange. Gaseous exchange is the movement of those gases from the lungs into the blood, or from the blood into the lungs. And this process is called diffusion. And we're going to talk about diffusion and how diffusion works. And then lastly, respiration. Respiration is what you're actually doing with the oxygen. So the oxygen is used for the process of cellular respiration to break down glucose to give us energy. And so these three things are very different. And so when you write this down, guys, you need to have an understanding that they are different. So breathing is the physical, mechanical process. Gaseous exchange, gases moving into the blood and out of the blood. And lastly, respiration, using that oxygen to break down glucose, which gives us energy, and releases carbon dioxide and water as a byproduct. That respiration stuff is done in grade 8. So if you can't remember it, just go back to your grade 8 notes and you can recap it. It's the mitochondria in the cell, which we did in grade 9 as well. So the mitochondria in the cell is responsible for respiration, and this is why we need oxygen. If we don't have oxygen, we don't have energy. If we don't have energy, we can't do our 7 life processes. Okay, so breathing is the process during which oxygen is inhaled and carbon dioxide is exhaled. It is an active physical process which ensures the transport of air to the lungs. The respiratory system is responsible for the following. It supplies the body with oxygen and it removes carbon dioxide from the body. And so there is just a picture showing you this. We have the nasal cavity, the oral cavity, which is the mouth. We have the larynx, which is the voice box, trachea, bronchioles, and then we have alveoli. Now don't worry, you don't have to catch this now as I speak. You guys can write this down when we get there. So we're going to move on each individual structure. So just a quick diagram there, guys. I will send this as well in the notes and you guys can have a look at it. If you have access to a printer, please print it for me. If you don't have access to a printer, we will have printable worksheets or printed worksheets that your parents can collect when Mrs. James lets you know that they're ready. And then the last part for today's lesson is we're going to set up a table, much like we did with the digestive system. So remember when we did the digestive system, we did the organ, the description, and then the function. Same thing, I want you to set up a table now after you've done the introduction to this specific topic. You're going to set up a table, and then you're going to put the organ, the description, and the function, and we're going to move through each organ. So just for today, we're only going to look at the nasal cavity. Okay, so there you can see the nasal cavity. Air is passed in through the nose. Okay, so when we breathe in, air passes into the nose. It is slowed down by these little bones. And now in grade 9, I don't expect you to know the names of these bones, but those bones kind of jar outwards into the nasal, into the nostrils. Okay, and that slows the movement of the air down. Okay, and what happens is the air is warmed, it is moistened, and it is purified. Okay, and what happens is as the air passes through, it's purified of our dust and germs in the nose. There's mucus glands that moisten the air and also trap any dirt and dust. And then lastly, there are blood vessels, lots and lots of blood vessels that line your nose. This is why your nose can easily have a nose bleed. Okay, that's because there's lots of blood vessels lining the nose, and those blood vessels transfer heat from the blood into the air, warming the air. Okay, so the blood vessels warm the air, the mucus glands moisten the air, and then there's these fine hair-like structures called cilia. So along the mucous membrane, it's lined with cilia. Cilia are just fine little hair-like structures. They're not nose hairs, so we have nose hairs as well. We also have over and above those nose hairs these tiny little cilia, and those cilia trap dirt and dust, pushing it away from our respiratory system. Okay, grade 9s, that's it for today. Copy the table, and then as we move on from each section throughout this topic, you guys can add to the table as we move along. Okay, grade 9s, thank you so much, and missing you guys plenty. Lots of love. Bye, guys.